This is just a metaphor for trying to understand that relationship of ourselves to the ultimate.
Right.
Imagine, if you will, a large board here that has holes in it, thousands of holes, through which light can come. And that is this side of existence that we're in now. On the other side of the board is an infinitely infinite light. And this infinitely infinite light is pure consciousness itself, undifferentiated, unconditioned, totally aware, Satchidananda, nirvana, the infinite reality, the infinitely infinite with an infinite number of attributes, with that deep intention of love.
Yeah.
It's the Godhead, God. And God and Godhead are just two sides of the same coin, the active and passive, the yin and yang. And then we are those little points of light. But we are not autonomous in ourselves. We are that light. Or as Eckhart would say, that infinite light, you are God, he, she, or it, God, I'm God, but God is not you, he, she, or it, or they. That infinite light, though we are ontologically that, in the deepest part of ourself, that's all you can be. But we do not, at this point, experience the identity of the one who's minding the store, if you will. That infinitely infinite light. I think we're going to discover up the road of history that the light we see in this universe is not that light, but a shadow of it, if I may stretch the metaphor, an emanation of it. That light in itself is so transcendent, so beyond, and yet so near to us. That's one thing. In the Christian tradition, and I think also Sufism and the Jewish tradition, and I think in some of the Hindu schools, that crucial stage in the journey to union and communion and intimacy with the divine is a period of extreme desolation, because, as you say, you've glimpsed heaven, you've had that experience of God, and then the divine kind of withdraws it. But why is the divine doing that? Only so our will, our self-will, our self-grasping will dissolve. And then there's no obstacle to union. Again, what Eckhart said, for God to get in, the creature must get out. It's kind of blunt and crude to put it that way, but it gets...
You're out of here.
Right,
yeah.
You're out of here, that type of thing. And so many of the traditions emphasize that, maybe all of them. I mean, in the Sufi tradition, the phonic consciousness, phana, which is annihilation of the self, annihilation of the autonomous, egoic, or false self. So that enlightenment is a total process of awareness, but also letting go of the self. I think that's why Jesus said, if you would find your true self, you must lose yourself. You must lose that self-grasping, egoic consciousness.
He who hateth not his own soul cannot be a follower of mine.
Yeah,
and that would be a very confusing statement for most Christians.
Yeah, it would be. It would be.
As you say, soul, creature, out of here.
Right. There can't be any autonomous kind of little program aside from God's. That's really what it means.
And you set aside a little bit you're going to save for yourself.
Yeah.
But your autonomy, you're like, okay, he won't see this.
He won't see this. He won't see this. And I think the best of meditation practice goes to the root of our motivation.
Yeah.
And the roots are found in the unconscious, in seeds of motivation we may not even be aware of.
Yeah.
They're affecting our attitudes, our disposition, our conscious goals, and everything has got to be given over. I think of the poet Eliot, costing precisely everything.
Yeah.
Can't hold anything back. Remember when I was a novice some years ago, one of the masters, novice masters, we had two. One who taught us spirituality and the other one who taught us the rules of the life and so forth and so on. And the one who taught us spirituality, Father Dave, was a very holy man. And he said very much in the Spanish mystical tradition, John and Teresa. And he would say, never give yourself to God in one great act of self-donation. Because inevitably, you'll end up taking yourself back bit by bit. You know? And in youthful idealism, you get onto a path and all of a sudden you immediately give yourself to God. But then as you go along, you realize, well, I'm not so sure about this. I need to go, explore this a little more and so forth. You have to be sure. And I think a meditation practice or any gutsy practice that gets at those roots and inspires your will to surrender will bring about a fundamental change in the unconscious, where those seeds of motivation you'll become aware of them, and then you can let them go. You can transcend them.
It's like we're saying that the subject becomes an object.
Yeah.
Until there is only absolute subject.
Until there's only absolute subject. Yeah. Absolute subject. And that statement you made about the deepest part of ourselves is one with God. John of the Cross puts it even stronger. He says at some point, now I know, and many other mystics say this, now I know that in the deepest part of myself, my deepest self is God.
Yeah.
The creature must get out if God is to get in.
Yeah, and you're allowed to say it at that intersection.
At that intersection, which is the same thing as aham brahmasmiti.
Absolutely.
I am Brahman.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fine line. Often it has to be walked in the exoteric religions, East or West, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
But that line about, well, even in the Gospels, as I recall, at one point they say, Christ says, "Why are you stoning me for bad works?" And they say, "Not for bad works, no, but for blasphemy, because you, being a man, make yourself out God."
Mm-hmm.
And that's the supreme identity is a very delicate, difficult thing to understand and convey, because people always misunderstand it.
Right.
As you think, you, Ken Wilber, are God, or you, Wayne, are God. And that's not what we're saying.
Yeah.
That's certainly not what the mystics are saying.
No.
And so it gets very confusing.
It's very confusing.
Be very, very careful about that.
Yeah, and that's why Al-Hallaj got in trouble.
He
was very blunt. He was very poetic.
I am the truth.
I am the truth. Yeah, and in these robes is only Allah.
Yeah.
I mean, he was right.
Yeah.
He was absolutely right, and that was a statement of great humility.
Yeah.
It wasn't an ego thing with him.
No, that's the bizarre, that's what's so misunderstood. Mm-hmm. You have to be 100% humble to be able to say that with any sort of authenticity.
Right.
But then not to say that is false humility.
Of course.
And that's the pullback.
Because it's really God who's saying it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you're denying God if you can deny it. You're denying that statement. Mm-hmm. And usually 3 times before the cock crows.
Right, exactly. Yes, yes, definitely.